All right, what's up, everybody? We are back with another edition of Like Father, Like Daughter. As usual, I have Caitlin on the pod, and this time we are getting really crazy because we're going to bring in part of the Omaha crew, which, if anybody knows, that's the black sheep of the whole side of the family. Actually, I don't know that there's even a white sheep in this entire family, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah.
I think we're all black sheep. Anyways, my cousin Tanya, what's up?
Hi. Not much. This will be interesting.
This will be interesting. So, as we've talked about before, and we talked a little bit before we came on, that part of the thing that Caitlin and I want to do on this pod is I want to introduce Caitlin to some of the family members that she has not met before, and learn about our family history. Caitlin's idea for this is to make it more of a family document of our history, right? So,
Yep.
and unfortunately, a lot of the older, your dad, my dad, Aunt Lana, those guys are all gone. So we don't really have anybody left to tell these stories. Maybe Uncle Brian, but we haven't gotten to that far. And he's so young, he probably doesn't remember some of those things. He probably wasn't involved in some of those things. So, but Tanya, your dad was my Uncle Ron, who I've always said looked the most like my dad, right?
Yeah. You
So,
said that. I've heard you say that all the time growing up.
I've always thought, and my dad would get so pissed when I would say that.
My dad would do the same. He'd say, I'm better looking than Melvin.
They had the same facial features,
They
the same
did.
hair, the same way they would comb their hair over. It's actually kind of scary. So,
Yep.
so tell
Even
Caitlin
the
a little
attitude.
bit. Right. Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. And I don't know a lot, to be honest with you, about Uncle Ron because, full transparency, my dad and Uncle Ron, I think at some point had a falling out. Didn't talk much. And that happened a lot with my dad and a lot of family members for whatever reason. And he, had a better relationship at the end, I think, with Uncle Carol. Uncle Carol was there when he passed away. But I don't know that much about your dad.
Yeah. I think early on, your dad and my dad had some struggles, but there towards the end, they had gotten pretty close.
I remember at the end, I think we had met at Cuddy's. That was the first time I think I had ever spent any real time with him was at Cuddy's campground. Because Uncle Carol had a spot over there.
Right. I think that your sister's probably, you're the youngest, right, Chris?
I'm the baby. I'm the cute one.
Yeah, exactly. I hope they're not listening.
They don't. Nobody listens to this. I
know that when my sisters were young, they spent quite a fair amount of time at your house. But I think that you were maybe too young to remember that. And of course, I don't remember that because I didn't live with them.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually get to know my dad until I was about 15.
So, yeah, because you were your mom and your sister's moms are not the same mom, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I've heard a lot of
married. He just
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My mother.
Right. Yeah, he was married to Maggie, right? For the long time.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. He was married a few times. I actually remember going to a funeral, not a funeral. I'm sorry, a wedding here in. Yeah, and he lived in an apartment on the east side. And all I remember about that wedding is it was a Catholic wedding, and my dad was pissed because it was super long.
Yep.
he was pissed because it was a Catholic wedding and it was long. So maybe that's why he decided to pass away before mine. Mine was a Catholic wedding. He was like, "I'm out on that deal. I'll watch it. I'll watch it from upstairs." So
exactly. I'm not sitting through that again.
That's right. And your dad owned an appliance store, right? Uncle Ron owned an appliance store.
Yep, he did in North Omaha in Florence.
He had that for quite a while, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a couple of different ones. He had one when I was little. I do remember meeting my dad a couple of times. at Shipley Appliance, or I think it was Shipley Hydraulics then. And that was like 43rd and Redmond. And then he opened a shop in Florence. And that was the last one that he had for quite some time, yeah.
Okay. So tell me some of your best memories of Uncle Ron.
Probably, I'll tell you one of my first memories.
Okay.
As a teenager, I do remember, I have memories when I was very small. But my first memory as a teenager and going to see him on my own was my sister Pam, who is my mother's daughter, lived maybe 3 or 4 blocks from my dad's store. She was married. Her son was just a baby and he had chickenpox. So she wanted my mom to come babysit. Well, I skipped school and went with my mom because I had ulterior motives. So
I can't believe that you would skip school. That does not seem in your wheelhouse.
I know. Doesn't even seem to be, does it? Got caught every time, too. My dad knew everything. So I had walked down to my dad's shop, and Maggie was working. She was out front when I walked in, and my dad and Uncle Andy were in the back working. And I walked in. I did not even tell Maggie who I was. I just walked in the door. And she said, "Ron, your daughter's here." And he came out and knew who I was. And I hadn't seen him since, I don't know, had to be 4 or 5 years since I'd seen him at all, you know. So I really didn't know him very well growing up until I was 15. And then I moved in with him shortly after that.
Really?
So, yeah.
What made you decide that?
I didn't really have a choice.
Okay.
He had gotten kicked out of the place that we lived because my mother's husband got us kicked out. And so she called my dad and asked him if he would take me and Ronnie and let us stay with him for a while. And he said, "Yeah, they can come stay with me, but I don't promise that they're coming back to you." And we did not.
Yeah.
You know, then we just stayed with him until we were grown. And I remember him asking me when I was in high school, he's like, "Do you want me to change your name?" He's like, "Oh, never mind. You're already, you know, you're just going to change it in a few years anyways." But then he turned around and changed it to Shipley anyways. I want you to change it. That should be my name.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Even if I only have it for a year, that should be my name. So he did. But I can tell you that Missy and I would skip school. And every time we got busted, he knew everything.
I don't know how they know.
One.
Like they did not need tracking cell phones back then to
No.
know that we were not where we were supposed to be. I don't know how they would know that, but they did.
He knew everything.
Dad was the same way.
Did not get away with anything.
No. Dad would almost like Dad knew that you had done something wrong, so he would just trick you into it, admitting it.
Yep.
It'd be like an interrogation. And you would just confess because you're like, if he knows already, I might as well just say it.
Yeah, I'm already caught. I might as well.
Right. I might as well just confess.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly convinced he didn't. He just assumed that we were dicking around. So he was like, well, let's see if I can get him to admit something.
Yep.
That's also how he would guess Christmas presents.
Yeah.
The famous time that I had bought, I was a freshman in college and I bought mom and dad matching Iowa State jackets, and I had mom and dad embroidered on them. And I came home and I put the present under the tree. This was on Christmas break, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and we had one of those like bench seats, right? And the end of the kitchen table was up against the wall. So I'm sitting on the bench and he sits right next to me. I can't get out of the fucking kitchen table. Like I'm blocked in there at this point. And he's like, what's in the box? Nothing. None of your business. Got me a present, didn't you? And now mom's sitting on the other side of the table and she's like, yeah, that's our Christmas present. And dad said, huh? Well, you bought it in Ames. Wonder what that is. You know what? I'm not talking about it. I said, just let me out of here. Cause I could just feel myself like I was having the hot white light on me. And I was like, no. And he's like, I'll bet it's something Iowa State. And now at this point, you can see it on my face, right? Like, I'm like, fuck. And he's like, and mom goes, it's probably Iowa State jackets or something. And I must have made some kind of reaction. And he was like, yep, that's what it is. I'll bet they have our names on it too. And I was like, that's it. You're not fucking getting them. I said, I was so pissed. I was like, how did he guess that? God, I was so mad.
It back if I could.
Right. Yeah, you just ruined it. Thanks a lot. But that was like his favorite thing would be to guess presents.
Yep.
But there's a good example. Like he just cornered me into the kitchen table. I had no out whatsoever. I couldn't get out. And then anytime he would say something, I'd have a facial reaction and he knew. Okay, now I'm getting somewhere. I can just keep pushing the buttons and he'll crack eventually.
That hasn't changed, by the way.
No, I do the same thing to Caitlin. That's a Shipley family trait.
That's good. You have to carry that on.
That's right.
Yep. He's going to do it if we don't.
Yeah, I think you left out the part about the twinge of guilt, though, that Grandpa, because he would play on our kind hearts. He would play on your kind heart, and you would play on my kind heart. He tried to do it to Tyler once and go, oh, guess Caitlin doesn't get to go to the fair, and she's like, wow, that sucks.
Tyler was like, oh, that's her problem.
Yeah. But you Grandpa would use that guilt on you because it worked.
Dad's famous line to me when I got kicked out of Iowa State was, I was waiting for it too, Tanya. I thought for sure he was going to tear me a fucking new one. And I was preparing to go in the house because I'd gotten removed for grades. And Dad had paid for every dime of my school out of his pocket. And so I was drinking and dicking around and not going to class. And so I come in and I sit down at the kitchen table and I was like, I got removed for academic probation and I was fucking waiting for it. And all of a sudden he just goes, I always thought it would be me that would disappoint you and not you the other way around. Oh, wow. Son of a bitch. Now I feel that's worse than taking a beating.
Scream at me.
I was like,
hit me.
I was like, I was devastated because I knew he had spent all that money and he was struggling to even pay that probably.
Right.
So yeah, Shipley family guilt is like a trait.
Oh yeah. When I first moved in with my dad, his favorite thing was always, you got a chip on your shoulder. Get this chip off your shoulder. I'm like, I don't. We did not get along for probably the first 3 or 4 months that I lived with him because he thought I had a chip on my shoulder, but I didn't. I just was trying to feel things out. I didn't know where I really belonged.
You were a 15-year-old girl who got displaced.
Right.
And now I'm in this house with a million kids and there was a lot of us. Paula still lived at home. Joyce wasn't at home, but I think she was 2 houses down. And then Missy, Angel, Ronnie, and me.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of us.
So when you moved in, how was that combining with Melissa and Paula and Angela? Was that hard?
That was good. We all, we have never considered ourselves halves. We are sisters and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And it just was like we always knew each other.
Yeah.
Out of all of Ron's kids, I think I probably resonated the most with you.
Yeah.
I don't know why. You and I always connected at family events or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. But that is just kind of a special little bond that we have, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, what about, I know it was hard, obviously, when Dad died, and Uncle Ron passed away after that.
Yeah.
I remember going to that funeral, and that was really sad.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost him. We've lost Aunt Joyce. Aunt
Yeah.
Lana passed away several years before that.
Right.
So, and I can remember going, and we would visit Lana a lot.
Right.
I don't know why we never really went. I mean, and he always got along with Aunt Joyce, but we always stayed at Aunt Lana's house.
Well, I think probably because you had it on both sides with Aunt Lana. You know what I mean? With the kids, you were kind of double cousins. You know.
Yeah, I tried to explain that dynamic to people too. That's
I know.
It's a little.
Your sister.
We have the exact same blood. We have the exact same blood. So.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare that happens. So.
Right.
All right. Let's take a break and then let's talk about Grandma. Let's drop the bomb on Caitlin about Grandma. Did you know you had a cold-blooded murderer in the family, Caitlin? I don't know that it was cold-blooded though. I reading the story, I don't know that
was it a crime of passion?
No, it was not. Well, might have been a crime of whiskey.
It's more of a self-defense.
Right, it was right, and whiskey and fueled. So
yeah.
Speaking of whiskey, let's get a word from our sponsors at Revelton Distilling Company.
Yes.
From our AKC Marketing Studios. We'll be right back.
Why take the best corn in the world and make it into fuel when you could make it into whiskey? That's the question that launched Revelton, Iowa's most visible and fastest growing distillery. Owners Rob and Christy Taylor embrace the grain-to-glass philosophy, sourcing ingredients locally and overseeing on-premises production and bottling at their facility in Osceola. One sip and you'll agree that Revelton's handcrafted whiskeys, gins, and vodkas are the best you've ever tasted. And with the launch of their rye whiskey, made with 100% Iowa-grown rye and corn, and their new bourbon coming soon, there's more Revelton to love than ever. Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
All right, and we're back. So before the break, we were talking about Uncle Ron. And when I messaged Tanya about this, you sent me a message back a couple days ago and said that your daughter asked if I had ever talked about Grandma's murder.
Yep, I did. She asked me.
I have not. Simply because I didn't know all of the ins and outs. So I will tell you what I knew before we get into this. All I knew was that she was living with a man, and she had shot him. I knew that it was partially self-defense, but my dad never talked about it. As a matter of fact, I don't even know that I heard that story until I was probably in my mid-20s.
So wait, so clarifying, it was just your dad's mom?
This was my dad's mom. Yep. Arlene. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Arlene.
Arlene. That was her name at the time. I think she had like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Right, Tanya, didn't she?
Yep.
Loretta, and you were around her a lot more than I was because I didn't see her very often. So and definitely when she was older, because I didn't know her any other way than when she was married to Cecil. So
same.
Who was a sweetheart.
Yes.
You talk about a saint among sinners, for God's sakes.
For sure.
No kidding.
What was his name?
Okay, so Cecil was
I love
Grandma's husband, who I knew. They were married for a long time, right? But when I was a baby, when I was young, they were married, and that was the only grandpa I knew was Cecil. Mm-hmm. And then they had adopted two kids, a brother and sister, Mandel and Rochelle.
Yeah.
So,
did you know Papa Shipley?
Nope, he died before I was born.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, and Tanya, I think, is probably the same as me. The story with Grandpa Shipley was he would nickname all of his grandkids. They all had nicknames. I never got one because he passed away before I was born.
Right.
That's why that's why they called Cass.
Yeah.
That's why that's why Cass's name was Cass, because Grandpa named him after Casper the ghost.
Why?
Because he was such a pale looking baby, apparently. That's the story I heard anyways. So, and a matter of fact, yesterday was the anniversary of Cass dying.
Yeah.
That was the anniversary that he died. Yep.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
And where would Casper have been was he older than you?
He was 3 years older than I was, so he was before me and after Kim.
Okay, gotcha.
Which I've always said, I think his death had a profound effect on how Mom and Dad raised me.
Right.
I think they very, very overprotective.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom has said she's convinced that God gave her me to have another boy.
Yeah.
Because she had lost him. So
yeah.
When she was in the hospital last year and was really sick, when Dad walked in, she just started crying immediately and went, "My baby's here," and I started crying because I was like, "It's a baby."
Well, and I've said this before. Losing a child like that never ever leaves you, because I remember being in the room when Dad passed away, and when that line went flat and everybody knew that he had passed away, the first thing out of Mom's mouth is he gets to see my baby before I do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about some fun stuff like a murder. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. Anyways,
let's add some levity to this situation.
That's all right. Let's see. They buried
Cass. Mystery.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. They buried Cass on their anniversary. That's why they never celebrated. So yesterday was his birthday. That's right.
Yeah, yesterday was.
I did not know. I did not know that they buried him on their anniversary. That does make sense, though. That's the reason why they never celebrated it. Huh?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yike.
See, this is why we have these. This is why we have these podcasts, so people can come in here and correct me when I'm wrong. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so the story that I heard about Grandma was that when Grandpa Shipley died, the federal marshals brought Grandma to the funeral, but they refused to take off the handcuffs and would not let her be in there without handcuffs. And the story that I heard from Dad was that Dad, Ron, Carol, and Kevin threatened to beat the holy living shit out of those federal agents if they didn't get her out of when they were at the funeral.
Really?
That was the story I heard. Now I don't know. I don't know that anybody's alive to verify that.
Right.
Which is also a felony, but that's beside the point.
Well, at that point, but they were adamant. They were not. And those federal agents, according to Dad, relented and was like, "It's not worth it. We'll be right outside. It's not like she's going to go anywhere."
Wow.
So.
Well, things were a lot different back then.
Yeah.
Than they
are.
Yeah. They would not, if that was today, she would not go to that funeral, period.
No, she would not. Nope.
She would not be allowed to attend that.
Which is crazy to think about.
Right.
Okay, so here's...
Dive into the case.
All right, so I'll read this verbatim, and I don't know, have you ever heard... You didn't know the story either until you Googled it, right, Tanya?
Correct. When my dad died, I went camping for a weekend all by myself. And I just did a lot of ancestry, and because there was a lot of questions that I still had. I'm like, he died and I don't know all these things.
Right.
Well, during my weekend of researching these things, I came across the article. And I had told everybody that I came across the article. Aunt Joyce was so mad at me.
Why?
I'm like,
it's not like it's not public knowledge.
She's like, because I don't want people to think of my mom like that. And then she got over being mad, and she kind of explained things to me. She's like, she wasn't a mean person. She didn't do it. She did it because he had beat her in the face
Yes.
that day with a phone, with
Yes.
the phone receiver.
Yeah.
Had beat her in the face. And so she grabbed a shotgun and
this is a clear example of nowadays she would not have been convicted whatsoever.
Right.
But back then, and this was in 1965.
Yeah.
You know, as terrible as it sounds, beating your wife or beating your it was not. That was not. It wasn't a crime, right?
No.
And Jackie
expected.
Jackie does confirm I was there. That's exactly right. And when they saw the Hill Boys, that was enough for the cops. They didn't want to do anything. Yeah, because Uncle Leonard and Uncle Gordy were there too. And from what I understand, you did not want to fuck with those two in Osceola. That's what I've heard. So, they were pretty mean, tough. Mm-hmm. They ran that town. The guy's house where she shot him is across from Scott's Body Shop, where she was running a speakeasy.
Oh God, she was even running a speakeasy.
That doesn't surprise me either. I know right where Scott's Body Shop is. You know, Caitlin, that's only about 1.5 miles from your school.
Yeah, I drive by it all the time when I go to Pleasant Hill because I take that way to Pleasant Hill. Right? That's that.
No, Scott's Body Shop is on the northeast side, I think.
Let me look. Yeah.
You Google it. I'll read the story.
That's what I'm doing. You read the story.
Okay, so shortly after, I'm sorry, hold on. For many months prior to April 11th, 1965, the defendant, it's on Southeast 6 is what, so it's on the north side.
That's where I drive by there all the time to get to Pleasant Hill. Yeah.
Defendant and Ralph Stewart lived together without any pretense of being married. I love how this is written too, right? Like this is clearly taken from that exact time. Like she's
a harlot. Yeah.
It's written, it's the way it's written is like hysterical.
But similarly, when I found the article about Cass's death, it was written kind of in an like accusatory and like I was like, I can't believe that they would say these like he was slain or like I was like, what?
Didn't you sent that to me on a text, right?
I have.
Send it to me again if you have it, and I'll read it. So Stewart was married. So Stewart was married to another woman. He worked at a packing house during the week and with defendants' help did an extensive bootlegging business on weekends in the home where they lived in Southeast Des Moines. They were assisted by one Anna Miller, who usually stayed in the home over the weekends. Consumption of their liquor was not limited to their customers. The way this is written is so great. They
party on, brother.
They drank to excess, at which times, according to defendant, Stewart ceased being his kind, considerate self and struck her on several occasions. He often told her he was going to send her body to Estes. Estes is a funeral home in Des Moines engaged primarily in burial of Negroes. Defendant is Caucasian. She testified she believed he so intended that. Others also testified Stewart often jokingly made such statements. Shortly after 9 p.m. on April 11th, the Des Moines Police Department received a report a man had been shot at 609 Southeast 5th Street. Upon their arrival, they found defendant in front of the house screaming for help and shouting she did not mean to shoot him. She told them Stewart had struck her earlier that day and they had been arguing that evening. She was afraid he was going to harm her and that she shot Ralph Stewart. She kept exclaiming, "Please don't send me to Estes." Analysis of defendant's blood taken shortly thereafter showed 221 milligrams per cent, or 121 milligrams over the recognized standards. So, okay, hold on. I got to catch up here. Jackie's commenting. So, let's see. What is this? Tell Caitlin about Cecil carrying Lana out of a bar in Omaha. All right, we'll get to that. I don't know that story. Anna Miller was Grandpa Miller's girlfriend or wife. Okay, so wait, like mom's dad? Is that right? Oh, now I'm really confused. We are really
intertwined.
We may only have one branch in this whole family tree. All right. Jackie said yes. Okay, well, it just gets better and better.
We have
Stewart's-
talked about trying to draw it out before.
Oh, there's no way. There's no way. Stewart's blood taken later in the evening at Estes Funeral Home showed 131 milligrams per cent. So they were drunk. When the police officers went into the house, they found the body of Ralph Stewart on the kitchen floor. He had been shot in the head. It had caused his death. They saw an accumulation of beer cans and whiskey bottles on the table. Anna Miller had remained in the house. As a witness, Jackie said, I told you I know a lot. I'm aware. As a witness, she described the gun used by defendant and related the events leading to the shooting. She was in another part of the house when the defendant shot Stewart. The defendant testified that evening there was an argument between her and Stewart because of his failure to insist on payment from a renter and his refusal to padlock the rented house. She decided to call a member of her family to come and get her. She was going to leave Stewart. Defendant further testified when she went to the phone, she found Stewart talking on the kitchen extension. Okay, let's stop. Caitlin, do you know what a kitchen extension is? You know what that means?
No.
See, Tanya, this is why we do this, because I love to stop and then point out that she doesn't have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. So when you had a regular old landline,
Mm-hmm.
if I was on the phone downstairs and you picked up the phone upstairs, you could hear the phone conversation because it was all on the same phone line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. you
Okay,
used to be
well,
able to do
even
that with our
other
old
times,
phone.
if you were on a party line, sometimes the person down the street was on the phone and you could hear their conversation, and you had to wait for the person down the street to get off the phone.
Oh.
That's how it was when we lived on the farm in Lacona. Defendant testified it was her gun and it was necessary. I'm sorry, let's get the hell off the phone, he said, and the other party called her a white bitch. She then went to the kitchen and demanded that Stewart call back and make the party apologize. Anna Miller testified Stewart was attempting to make such a telephone call when the defendant shot him. So this witness apparently said he went to go call this person back and she turned around and shot him. Defendant had put her gun in her pocket earlier the evening. The defendant testified it was her gun and it was necessary to pull the hammer back before it would discharge. So me with my $5 police degree tells me that testimony right there probably is what found her guilty.
Right.
Okay, but here, let me come in with some, how do we know that she wasn't traumatized by being hit by that phone receiver earlier?
Of course she
How
was.
did she not? No, but
Of
I'm
course
saying
she
that's
was.
exactly that's what they, like they didn't know about
And
that.
now-
That's so crazy to
right.
me that they wouldn't know about that. But like now that would be the biggest argument. How
Right.
would she not know
Now
that that's
she
not
would have
gonna
a
happen
defense
to her
attorney
again? Yeah.
that would have testimony that she was traumatized and probably had PTSD and everything else. I'm
Right.
sure.
By
Right.
the way, I found the wedding announcement for Ronald J. Shipley and Susanna K. Mikesell
Oh,
that I
yeah.
had sent,
Yeah.
where
Oh, okay.
where Melvin Shipley was the best man, and
Yeah.
Daryl Shipley Jr. And
Yeah.
and I found the article. The title of the article for Cass's death was "Plastic Bag Smothers Todd." Like you would never see a headline like that.
No.
or
All right,
like
you got to
an
resend
article
that to me.
title.
Resend that to
Okay.
me. All right. So, defendant on direct examination testified she walked into the kitchen, started to cry, and told Stewart she didn't deserve being called such a name. She stated he had the telephone receiver in his hand and told me to shut up and said Estes would get my body or something to the effect, and took a steps toward me with the phone and I jumped up and got the gun and it went off. He had taken the receiver away from his ear and had it raised slightly turned. I was afraid he was going to hit me with the telephone and might kill me with it. I was afraid he was going to hit me in the head, and I knew he was going to hit me with the phone. I knew that because he had hit me before. When I pulled the gun out of my pocket, I was trying to protect myself to get by him. I had to go in front of him and couldn't go to the left because of the stove. I couldn't go to the right because the table was there. I didn't mean to shoot him. I just meant to protect myself until I couldn't get past him. I don't remember anymore. I was down on the floor, had my arms around him, talking to him, telling him I loved him and that it was an accident. Seems powerful, pretty powerful statement. Testimony.
Yeah, she would have never been convicted today.
No, I don't think so either. Also, you got to remember ballistics, trajectory, all that stuff is available now that they did not have in 1965.
That's
Correct.
crazy.
On cross-examination, the defendant testified, at the time I fired the shot, he was looking at me. I could not say I was directly in front of him, maybe just slightly to one side. He was standing at the phone, did not have my hand on the gun when I went in the kitchen. I just pulled the gun automatically to protect myself. I never meant for that gun to go off. I didn't pull the trigger. It just went off. So that goes back to what the other witness said, who said you have to pull the hammer back to shoot it.
Mm.
Up to this point, Ralph hadn't touched me on this day. He had the phone ready to hit me. I knew he was going to hit me in the head because he had hit me there before. I didn't say anything when I had the gun pointed at him. I don't remember how long it took me. The time he took a step toward me to jump in, I pulled the gun from my pocket and pulled the trigger. It was all done in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Defendant's requested instruction 2 stated that if the defendant drew the pistol under circumstances just justified her doing so under the law of self-defense, and while so drawn it went off accidentally, she would be entitled to a verdict of not guilty. Requested instruction was to the same effect, except it cautioned the jury that the defendant did not bear the burden of proving the alleged accidental discharge, but it was incumbent of the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the gun in question was not discharged accidentally.
Yeah.
In this connection, you are instructed that the burden is upon the state. I'm trying to find the verdict. This is really in depth here of all the legal stuff too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting to like hear old witness testimony too, and
yeah, and they certainly they reference quite a other trials, and it looks like it went to appeal because the final verdict was we find no reason for reversal. Defendant had a fair trial. The case should be and is affirmed.
Right.
Now,
And does it go on to tell you later in the article about her? No, maybe it was a different article.
This article doesn't have anything else.
When she broke out of prison.
I don't have. I'm sorry. What?
She also escaped.
All right, hold on. I got to see. Jackie's filling in the gaps here. Grandpa Shipley loved her so much he loved there in that house while she had this boyfriend for a very short time. And at the time, they couldn't find the person who killed a little girl, and they interrogated her and said, if you tell us he killed and murdered that little girl, we can just close this case. And she refused because she knew that he didn't do it. Wow.
Meaning Ralph?
Yes, I'm assuming, that they wanted to pin it on Ralph. They wanted to pin it on Ralph.
Well, that there just tells you how much
you know what I got to do.
An accident and how true her story is.
Right.
Because if she really was looking for a way out of murder, she had it.
She had it. Yep.
You know what I got to do? I've got to call Sergeant Paul Parisic and see if he can pull the files on this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Tanya, I am really good friends with the public information officer here at the Des Moines Police Department. I'm thinking I gotta text him later. Jackie said she thinks the girl was Pamela Snow. So now I gotta Google that. Who is that? I don't see it. Nothing real quick. Okay. So no, I don't have anything about her being broke out of prison or that she broke out of prison. Maybe that's why they didn't want to take the cuffs off her at that funeral. I mean, now that I look back, I'm not so sure that I would have uncuffed her either if she'd already left once.
Right.
Now I'm kind of on those guys' side.
Well, that's why she changed her name so many times.
Okay.
It's my understanding that that's why she had so many different names, because she had broke out. And I don't know if she just broke out once, or because I'm pretty sure she broke out once. They got her back in, and I think what I heard was there was a second time that she.
How does she break out? How do you do that?
I don't know.
Her name was Her name was Pamela Powers.
Look at
I just found her. She was 10.
Okay, so I did find a photo of Grandma on a heritage website. I don't know if you can see it very well,
Let me
Yep.
but that's her.
Yep.
And Arlene
sure.
Violet
Oh,
Shipley.
yep. I've seen
Uh,
that
Pretty
picture in
sure I
Grandpa's
added that.
room.
I put
Yeah.
that on there. Is that on Ancestry?
It's on history.com, myheritage.com,
Okay.
which probably pulls from that.
Uh-huh.
So, had one brother, David Hill, married Daryl Fletcher Shipley. Daryl was born in 1902. They had 6 children: Lana, Linda, and 4 other children that they didn't bother to name. That's nice.
Yeah, right.
Let's click on that link. Oh yeah, I got to sign up for that. Then she married Cecil Belgrave, and she passed away in 1990. I remember when she passed away. I was at summer camp, and Mom and Dad had come to see me on Wednesday for summer camp, and wanted to know if I wanted to leave so I could go to the funeral, and I told them no. I mean, I never got to go to camp, and Dad was like, it's fine if you don't want to go. It's not a big deal.
Right.
So, Jackie said they caught her, and she was gone a long time, and they sent her to Rockwell City. I've got to call Paul and get all this information. I've got to know. He's got to have a way to figure it out.
The person who was convicted of the girl of Pamela Powers, his name is Robert Anthony Williams. He had died in 2014.
How did you find that?
I looked up Pamela Powers, Des Moines, and
Christmas Eve tragedy still haunts downtown YMCA.
Yeah, I found the.
No, that was 9 years ago, Caitlin.
No,
oh
yeah,
wait,
Dad,
Des Moines child killer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it was about him dying.
Here we go.
Just an
I found it. We are completely off the rails now. All right, I found this article. All right. See, this is what happens, Tanya. We go off a complete fucking tangent.
Exactly.
But tell me this isn't great. This is great stuff.
Well, I mean, this is
Girl
great
10
stuff.
abducted from
reading,
YMCA.
It's really not great. Let's tone down our excitement.
Correct.
Here.
I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. I feel bad. You're right. Okay, so Girl 10 is abducted from YMCA. Robert Anthony Williams. What?
So do you have an ad going on your screen?
That's fine. Was convicted of the Christmas Eve slaying of a young girl that shocked Des Moines area residents in 1968. Okay, well then that doesn't make any sense. If he died in 65. In I don't know. That's weird. Crazy. Okay. So the homework for this assignment is I have to call Paul Parizek and I have to get some case files pulled.
Yep.
Yeah.
Details.
Surely he's got to know. Surely he can have access to. I got a text. Hold on.
I'm sure he has access to a lot of Shipley case files.
Right. Crazy question. If I had a family member, what was that? 60 years ago?
Yeah, 19. Can we look at your evidence archives from 1965, please? Under Shipley.
Access
Arlene Shipley.
to any of those
I'm
files.
sure there's still stuff.
Yep.
I said, hey, crazy question. If I had a family member 60 years ago commit a murder, would you have access to any of those files? Surely he will answer me back. Okay, so here's the article about Cass. Yeah, I can already tell how this is read is odd. Jackie said that's what Dad told her about the little girl. Maybe, I don't know. 2-year-old boy suffocated Tuesday at his home at 1200 East 37th Street when a plastic sack became wound around his head as he took an afternoon nap.
Became wound around his head. Like that, first of all, makes it sound like somebody wound it around him.
Dr. Leo Luca, Polk County medical examiner, said Melvin Shipley Jr., son of Mr. and Mrs. Melvin Shipley, was found dead at 5:45 p.m. on a bedroom floor where he had been sleeping. Lucas said the boy had been dead for 3 or 4 hours by the time the fire department rescue unit arrived. Police say they were called to the house originally to check on a report of a traffic accident, but found the child on the bedroom floor. The other members of the family were in other rooms of the house during the afternoon and did not notice the child. Dr. Luke had told police he pronounced the boy dead at the scene. The boy's father told police the plastic bag that had caused his son's death came from a laundry and was used for packaging laundered shirts. It was not known how the child became entangled in the bag.
But Grandma has said that she always left the window open for him when he took naps because it would, like, so he wouldn't get hot. And then the unfortunately, and blames herself because it was her bag, and which is, it's not her fault because nobody.
I think she had a dress or something that
it was
in
new
a bag.
School clothes.
Yeah,
it was new school clothes that had just gotten laundered.
Yep.
So, yeah, but it's crazy how, like, articles, like, it's just so. You would never
read that way now.
You would never read something Smothers taught.
No.
Like.
No, that's not exactly a great. That's not a great headline at all.
Gen Z would rage, like everybody would be triggered. It would just cause an upset.
Yeah. Okay. We didn't get to any other ads because we were deep in murder. So, but that's okay. Tanya, I really appreciate you coming on. It was kind of, I mean, it's interesting to talk about this stuff, but it's also fun to talk about Uncle Ron and Dad and
yeah,
I don't know. It's the same thing I told Scott when he was on and we were talking before with Caitlin. I feel like I missed out on a lot.
Me too.
Because I hear stories like Debbie and Melissa talk about pizza nights at Maggie's and all, and even you to an extent when you were there at 15 and so on. I never got any of that. Even my sisters got a little bit of that. I never got any of that. And I think that's why I feel so disconnected from everybody over there. Like I've said, I will tell you this, since Uncle Carol's funeral, I have made it really important to me to make sure that I get to know a lot of my Omaha cousins. I was not friends on Facebook with Melissa or Paula or Angela or a lot of them because I just didn't know them.
Right.
As bad as that sounds. You know what I mean? I didn't know who they were. I know now, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you who was Paula and who was Angela because I barely ever spoke to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think what really triggered it for me was at Uncle Carol's funeral, Melissa knew who I was and she came up and gave me a hug.
Yep.
And I was like, she doesn't even know me.
Right.
But she did.
But she does.
She knew everything about me. Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, I felt guilty because I didn't know anybody.
Well, she did because they used to come to your house. You were little, so you don't remember, but she does.
Right.
Well, here's my question is I don't remember talking much about anyone outside of the family that lived outside of Des Moines. So like I really didn't even know of the. So was it the same in Omaha? Like, did you guys talk about your family in Des Moines, or was it kind of like?
Yeah, we did a lot, actually.
And I think that was probably because you guys were all together, and you would tell family stories or whatever else. For us, it was Dad and Carol in Des Moines, and for the longest time, they didn't speak.
Yeah.
Harry and I have had long conversations about how much we missed out because we're the exact same age.
Yeah.
And we never got to see each other.
Yeah.
And Dad and Uncle Carol had a falling out. And I can remember being little, we used to go to Uncle Carol's house all the time.
Yeah.
I remember going to 4th of July parties at his house outside of the fairgrounds, just west of the fair or east of the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
I remember all that stuff, but at some point it just didn't. There's Paula. See, I know which one Paula is now. She's a terrible Cowboys fan. She's a terrible Cowboys fan. That's how I know who Paula is. No, I'm just kidding.
We used to go to Uncle Carol's all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because Uncle Ron and Uncle Carol were tight.
Yeah.
Because Harry would tell me all the time that they were close all the time.
Yeah. I went out there one summer with all my girlfriends and we camped in Uncle Carol's yard.
Yeah.
And now,
See,
one of my
again,
girlfriends
Tanya,
is
see
married
the
to
reaction
God.
of Caitlin? You camped in somebody's front yard? That would never be done nowadays.
No.
There's no way.
Well, that was
As a matter of
just
fact, I remember my mom and dad telling me you are not sleeping outside.
yeah.
Like, there's no way you're sleeping outside. Because they
Well,
were
that
afraid
was
somebody
his
would take
house
us.
on Dubuque, and he had all that land.
Yes,
And
that
we
was
just went down in the
Yep.
woods and set up tents.
that
and
was
then-
the place that's just east of the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend married Buddy.
As a matter of fact, Caitlin, Uncle Carol's house that she's talking about is technically directly behind your mom's house in Pleasant Hill. So
Oh,
when you
so
go,
like back by Sleepy Hollow.
yeah, so when you go past Sleepy Hollow and then go back up that hill and it starts to turn to the right, there's a lone little
Yeah.
dirt road that goes off to the left. He was back down in that. Right, Tanya? Kind of, does that make sense?
Yeah, you know.
I think so. You probably don't know that area very well, but I just remember that turn right
past the
there.
Fairgrounds,
Yep.
and
On
I take
Dean.
a
So like
left.
past Sleepy Hollow. Am I going past?
She
Sleepy
doesn't know what
Hollow?
Yeah, I
she
don't
doesn't know
what
what Sleepy Hollows is,
Hollow
but
is. I just
Oh.
know
So-
you went, like right past the fairgrounds, took a left, and then you took a right.
yes. Yep.
And it was
Jackie's
the-
around the corner from Grandpa Shipley's place.
Yes,
That doesn't
that's
help
what
me,
I heard.
Jackie. I don't know where that is. That does not help me.
Yep.
I'm just saying, Walker and I drive in that area all the time, and Walker has family that kind of lives over on that side.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we drive down those old side streets over in that area all the time. So I'm sure I've driven by it.
It's back in that
Be
area.
interested to know.
It's
Yeah.
off University. You turn down the street by now
Yep.
or later. Oh, okay. I'm way off then.
Yep. Right on.
Okay.
Walker and I
Yeah.
drive down that street. Walker loves to speed. It's a dirt road.
I don't remember it.
I
being-
don't know.
Or is there a dirt road back there?
I don't
I
know.
don't remember there
Are
being
you
a dirt
turning
road.
a left or you're turning?
off of University? Like if
Yeah.
we're coming
If you're
from
going,
the interstate, and you take
you take a right.
University, yeah,
Yeah.
and then you
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
left.
Yep.
Yeah, I know where it's at.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's just part of that was after Uncle Carol's funeral. I had made a decision that I was going to be more involved with my Omaha cousins.
Yeah, we
Because-
really need to do some kind of get together again soon.
Yeah, we do.
You know,
Absolutely.
Aunt Joyce really tried to make that happen,
She did. Yeah.
and it meant a lot that
I absolutely
got on.
adored Aunt Joyce.
Me too.
She number one, she was my favorite because I wasn't afraid of her. I wasn't scared of her.
Right, like Lana.
Okay, hold on. Harry's on.
I've heard
Harry's
stories
in.
about Lana.
Jackie is correct. Left it now and later, about 3 blocks. Still looks like a park today.
I know where it's at.
I remember being there and having bottle rocket fights on a 4th of July. That's what I
Yep.
remember about that
Mhm.
place. So, what was I saying? I can't remember now. I said something.
You were talking about Aunt Joyce being your favorite.
Oh yes, Aunt
'Cause you
Joyce
weren't
was my,
scared of her like Lana.
because Lana would yell at my dad, and in my mind, Dad was the toughest person I knew, and she would yell and scream at him, and I was like, anybody that would yell and scream at my dad is somebody I am not fucking with,
Right.
and I used to be scared to death of her.
Kind of
So-
like me with Aunt Jackie. I used to
Yeah.
be scared to death of Aunt Jackie. The way it's like, man, if she can talk to my dad like that, I don't know. No.
Right? It's Lana you needed to be afraid of. That's I know, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Because she
And
would,
we're
Yeah.
happy
she
that
did
you
not mess
didn't live
around.
in Omaha.
She did
Lana.
not mess around. There was
No.
no messing around around Aunt Lana. That
weren't
was,
you? Weren't you?
I'm pretty
afraid
sure she was.
around one of your grandmas too.
What?
Weren't you afraid around one of your grandmas?
Well,
too?
yeah,
Or
Grandma
was it-
Shipley. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Grandma
Yeah.
Shipley. You were afraid around her
The
too.
greatest story I have about Grandma Shipley is we went there, and Tanya, I'm sure you know, if you ate something there, you ate all of it. You did not put any of it back.
Yep.
If you took it, you were eating it.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, we were eating stew, and me and Mandel were in his room eating, and I was like, I am not eating this. And I remember Mandel going, just shut up and eat it. Just shut up and eat it. And I was like, I don't like it, and I am not eating it. So I walked back into the kitchen, and here's the difference for grandkids. I go, Grandma, I don't really like this. And she's like, okay, we'll just go ahead and put it on the counter. And I went back in there, and Mandel was pissed. He's like, that's total bullshit. I don't even know how old we were. And he walked in there and tried to tell her that he didn't want to eat it, and all I heard was a string of cuss words. And he had to come back in there, and he was so mad at me. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. But I was a grandkid, and I probably wasn't around a lot. Right. So she was like, I'm gonna give him some slack. Yep. But man, Mandel got none whatsoever. Yeah. And our favorite thing would be to go around the neighborhood and tell everybody we were cousins, because he was black and I was white, and it would freak people out. It would totally confuse people.
Yep.
That was like our favorite thing to do.
Actually, he's your uncle.
Yeah, he's my uncle. Right. Yes.
You probably went with uncle because you were even closer in age, and it probably freaked people out even more.
Yeah, because I don't know that he's probably 2 years older than I am. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen there's a picture you have.
Yeah, I do have a picture of him and I together somewhere.
Yeah, it was like Mandel and then his age and then Chris and your age.
Yeah.
He lives like a mile from me.
Does he really?
Yeah.
See, we need to get together.
Yeah, I never met Mandel.
I was just in Omaha. I was in Omaha for work a month ago for a day. I had to go view a couple apartment complexes that we own. So, as a matter of fact, no, I probably shouldn't say it online. I'll tell you after the podcast.
All right.
But Aunt Joyce, I'll get back to Aunt Joyce and then we'll end this. Aunt Joyce, every single time I saw her, she would always remind me that I owed her a brand new car. Because when I was little, I promised her that when I grew up and got big and had a lot of money, I was buying Aunt Joyce a brand new car. Oh. And every time I saw her from then on, that was like her favorite thing to tell me. Just so you know, you owe me that new car.
Okay, I have one really good Aunt Joyce story.
Okay.
So when my kids were little, my son Corey, she had bought him a birthday card. And she, signed it, Love, Aunt Joyce, or Auntie Joyce. Well, she didn't close the A, so it looked like a C. So he's like, who's Cunty Joyce? From that day on, he was always, until the day she died, she was always Cunty Joyce. And her and I would laugh about it all the time.
Oh yeah, because I'm sure she got a kick out of that.
Oh yeah, she thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Well, and Caitlin, you know that Grandpa used to call Joyce and Lana the warthogs. So that was yes. Yeah. Which I can't imagine why Aunt Lana was mean to him then. Right? Because he was kind of a jerk. So
yeah, warthog's kind of a mean thing to say, Melvin.
I know, right? I know. All right. We're gonna get off here. Tanya, stick on here. I'll tell the story about about Omaha after I'm off the air and I can talk freely. So thanks everybody for listening. This is a really good episode. It documents a lot, and the best thing about it was to me was to talk about Aunt Joyce. So because I never get to hear enough stories about Aunt Joyce and Aunt Lana and Uncle Ron and everybody else. So now what we need to, we had a cousin show with Caitlin and her cousins. Now what we need to do is have one where we have Scott and you and Missy.
Yeah, you and all Paula, your first and second cousins.
And all my first cousins, and then we can really talk some shit.
Yeah.
I'll just sit back
that'd be perfect.
I'll just sit back and turn the mics on and let it go. So
it's like a virtual family reunion.
It'll be a virtual family. It's like 2020. Everybody's on Zoom. Right.
That's right.
All right. Okay, everybody. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. Go ahead and check out the rest of the podcast on the Three Beers Media Network. Our Revelton Distilling Company is releasing their bourbon Saturday. I have might have a sneaky way to get in early, but that's just between me and Rob. So anyways, everybody else, have a great night.